Okay, so ready to dive into this whole giving your kid a financial head start thing, because it's clearly on your mind. And honestly, who better to guide us than like the rich dad himself, Robert Kiyosaki, right?
Yeah, what's so interesting about Kiyosaki is he doesn't just tell you what to do with money. It's more like he's challenging this whole system we grew up in,
Yeah.
Like he had these two dad figures, his own father, super smart guy, PhD and all, but always struggling financially.
Right.
And then his friend's dad never even finished school, but ends up a multimillionaire.
Uh,
That whole contrast, that's the foundation of his book.
It's like he's saying, forget what they taught you in school.
Right.
Like good grades, secure job. The rich dad, he saw things differently.
Totally. Imagine little Robert Kiyosaki bombs an English test, comes home devastated. His dad's all over him about grades.
Oh, I know that story.
Meanwhile, the rich dad sees an opportunity, uses that failing grade to teach Kiyosaki about, get this, financial statements. Argues those are the real report cards we should care about.
Instead of like grounding him, he's handing him a balance sheet. Now that's parenting, huh? But seriously, how do you explain that stuff to a kid without their eyes glazing over?
Kiyosaki's great with that. He's all about like actionable advice. He's got this saying, assets put money in your pocket and liabilities take money from your pocket. So imagine explaining to your kid that new video game console, that's cool, but it's a liability, taking money away. But what if instead we took that same money and like invested it?
Okay, now that's thinking outside the box. So it's not just money good, debt bad. It's more like teaching them to think about where their money goes, even if it's just allowances at first.
Exactly. Kiyosaki believes that even young kids can grasp these concepts, but it has to be tangible. He talks about how his rich dad used Monopoly to teach him about real estate.
Turning a game into like a financial simulator. I love that. Sneaking in the financial education while they think they're just having fun.
Yeah.
And then he even took that further with his own game, didn't he?
Exactly. Cash flow, it's called. He designed it specifically to make learning about money fun and engaging no matter how old you are.
So it's more than just being good at Monopoly. It's about really understanding how money moves.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this rich dad approach, it really is different from the usual financial advice. But like, what if you're not a financial whiz yourself? How do you even begin to teach your kid about this stuff?
Kiyosaki has a really interesting take on this whole thing. He says every kid, every single one is born with a unique genius.
Okay.
And traditional school, it focuses on such a narrow definition of intelligence. Kiyosaki's saying, like, what if your kid who's failing algebra is a natural salesperson? Or your daughter who hates history, what if she's got this knack for spotting investment opportunities?
So instead of forcing them into a box, you encourage them to find their strengths, but through this financial lens.
Yeah, and that must have been tough for him. His own dad was a superintendent of education.
Oh, right. I forgot about that.
It was a constant source of conflict, actually. Poor dad pushing him towards academics, rich dad's encouraging him to find his own path, even if it means challenging like everything he's been taught. He believes that real learning happens when you're passionate, engaged, not just going through the motions.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's where Kiyosaki is big on this idea of why. Like encouraging kids to question everything, to understand the why behind financial decisions, not just blindly following instructions.
So instead of save your allowance, it's more like explaining why HY saving is important and maybe even letting them like experience the benefits firsthand.
Exactly. Like let them see how their savings grow over time. Maybe even involve them in like simple investment decisions. Make it real for them, not just some abstract concept.
Right. I get that. But I think a lot of parents, myself included, would worry about like overwhelming kids with all this complex financial stuff too soon. Where do you even start?
Kiyosaki, his whole approach is about building that solid foundation, step by step. He talks about these 4 phases of like financial education.
Okay, I like a good plan. Lay it on me.
So it starts with personal responsibility, then you've got chores and paid work, then investing, and then finally entrepreneurship.
Okay, so personal responsibility. Sounds pretty basic, but I'm guessing it's more than just like clean your room.
You got it. Kiyosaki believes it starts with kids understanding they have a role to play, even if it's just small chores around the house, teaching them the value of contributing, taking care of their belongings.
So less about because I said so and more about we all got to work together kind of thing.
Exactly. Then as they get older, you transition into phase 2 chores and paid work. Now, this isn't about turning your kids into like tiny employees or anything.
Right.
It's about making that connection between effort and reward.
I can just picture Kiyosaki's poor dad handing out allowances, no questions asked. Meanwhile, the rich dad's got his kids presenting invoices for, like, completed chores.
You're catching up. See, it's about teaching them the value of work, negotiation, even a bit of self-promotion.
Wow, I never thought of it like that. Okay, so they've got the basics. They're rocking their little chore invoices. And what's next?
Phase 3, investing. Kiyosaki's a huge advocate for starting early, even if it's just a few dollars a month.
So are we talking like setting up a brokerage account for a 10-year-old? Because that feels a little
It
intense.
doesn't have to be that complicated. Could be as simple as buying a share of stock in a company they love, something tangible.
Yeah, so they can actually see how their investment, however small, can grow over time. But I'm guessing Kiyosaki wouldn't stop there. What's this about entrepreneurship?
He believes that, entrepreneurial thinking is just such a valuable skill. Even if your kid doesn't end up being the next, Elon Musk.
Right.
It's about problem solving, creativity, learning to spot opportunities. These are things that'll serve them well no matter what they end up doing.
So, like, encouraging that lemonade stand isn't just cute. It's practically business school, right?
Exactly.
Were there any, specific strategies from the book that really stood out to you?
Kiyosaki talks about the importance of financial field trips.
Okay.
Like, take your kids to a bank. Let them sit in on a meeting with your financial advisor. Attend a real estate open house. Bring those financial concepts to life, Show them it's not all just numbers on a page.
I love that. Instead of just lecturing them about saving money, you're showing them how it actually works in the real world.
That's it. Make it real, make it relatable, make it fun even. Because at the end of the day, if kids enjoy learning about money, they're way more likely to make smart decisions throughout their lives,
That makes sense. That makes sense. But it feels like there's this whole other side to money.
Right.
It's not always just about the logic and the numbers. It's like there's this whole unspoken language around money. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, Kiyosaki talks about that a lot. He calls it the hidden curriculum of money.
Okay.
So it's not just about budgeting or investing. It's those beliefs we inherit, the attitudes we pick up without even realizing it.
Right. Like if your parents were always stressed about money, you might just assume that's how it is, that wealth is for other people.
Exactly. And Kiyosaki says those beliefs, they become self-fulfilling prophecies. We got to actively rewire our thinking, especially when we're talking about teaching our kids.
Easier said than done, right? Like, where do you even begin to undo that kind of thing? It's so ingrained.
Kiyosaki's big on mentors. He says, find people who are already living the kind of financial life you want, And it's not about copying their every move, but observing their mindset, how they talk about money, how they approach challenges.
So it's like finding your financial role models, the people who show you what's actually possible.
Exactly. And he's not just talking about CEOs and Wall Street guys. Could be a local business owner, a friend who's really good with their finances, even his older relative who's built a nice retirement for themselves.
Someone who can demystify it all and make it feel real.
Yes. And just as important, someone who can actually guide you, support you, because let's face it, this whole financial literacy thing, it's not always easy.
Yeah, there are going to be bumps in the road.
Exactly. Kiyosaki talks about how his rich dad always pushed him to take calculated risks, to view mistakes as learning opportunities, not failures.
It's that whole entrepreneurial mindset, right? Embracing the challenges.
Exactly. And that can really set someone apart,
For sure. And it's something we could all use a little bit of,
Right.
whether you're running a company or just trying to manage your own finances at home. But what I think is so cool is how Kiyosaki connects all this to something bigger.
Oh, absolutely. He doesn't just stop at the individual level.
Right.
He really believes that financial literacy is key to a more just and equitable society.
Okay.
That when people understand how money works, they're less likely to, fall prey to those predatory lending practices, more likely to make good decisions for themselves, and ultimately more empowered to build a better future for themselves and their communities.
It's like he's saying, this isn't just a personal finance issue, it's a social justice issue.
Exactly. It's about leveling that playing field, giving everyone the tools they need to thrive financially.
That's huge. So much bigger than just dollars and cents. It's about empowering individuals, strengthening families, and just creating a more financially inclusive world for everyone.
Yes. And the best part, it's a journey we can all be on. Whether you're a seasoned investor or just starting to learn about this stuff, there's always something new to discover, new ways to grow, new levels of financial well-being to achieve.
It's kind of exciting when you think about it like that, right? We really do have the power to shape our own financial destinies. And in doing so, we can contribute to something much, much bigger.
It really is. And honestly, I think that's a perfect note to end on. What resonated with you from this deep dive into Kiyosaki's work? What action steps will you take to, empower yourself, empower your children with this knowledge? Keep those questions in mind as you continue on your own financial journey. Thanks for joining us.